What's up, guys? Today I've got one that I think a lot of you will enjoy. Now, this is an image that went viral a while back, generating some debate around this fictional football showdown. I had some strong instincts one way when I first saw this, but as I looked deeper into the question at hand, I soon learned just how great of a question this actually is. So if you've got some time to kill digging into the nitty-gritty of fictitious football, you're going to want to stick around. Before we jump into the particulars, let's first hype up this showdown by rolling the highlight reels of our contenders. Legendary to say the least. So let's start off our analysis simple and build our way up to the big question. I'm going to start off with Gump, because for some reason it makes more sense to me to start off on the offensive side of the ball. Gump's football career is mostly uncharted in the movie. Other than the couple of memorable scenes of running for Alabama, there isn't much else to go off of. This bothered me for quite some time, as I was having a hard time even piecing together a reliable timeline of Gump's playing career. That was until I realized I was being stupid, as the public screenplay provided dates at the top of each scene, which revealed to us that Gump's first season as an All-American came in 1962. This makes perfect sense also, as President Kennedy, who he meets afterwards, was shot the following year. The reason why this year is important to know is so that I can present you with this factoid. There was no All-American position for kick returners in 1962. Meaning that despite that being the only type of football that we see Gump play in the movie, he must have also been the starting running back for the team. When you look at what kind of numbers a halfback would have to have put up to be an All-American in 1962, you see that you'd need at least around 600 yards from scrimmage. This doesn't seem so exceptional by today's standards, but remember the type of player that Gump is. I don't imagine that he'll be catching any passes, meaning that he'll need to exceed the normal standards and rush for over 600 yards. Not to mention, to be a first-team All-American, he'd likely have to break 700 or 800 yards in order to beat out his competition, although it's never told in the movie whether he was first or second team. Bottom line, Gump isn't just a special teams threat like I was impressioned to believe when I first saw this movie. No, he is truly a Heisman candidate. Bobby Boucher's resume is much more straightforward. Anyone who's watched The Waterboy once can see that he is a hot-headed person who plays football with unmatched levels of raw aggression. His tremendous anger allows him to completely dominate opposing teams and finally win South Central Louisiana State University some games. He makes every tackle we ever see SCLSU make and sets a new NCAA record with 16 sacks, smashing the previous record of 7. So what happens in a head-to-head matchup? Well, unfortunately, we need much more information than this. Football is obviously not an individual sport, and that is where Boucher may find his weakness. To get an accurate answer, we can't ignore the teams that these players play for, nor the head coaches that they play under. Let's switch back to looking at Gump, who we've already established plays for the 1962 Alabama Crimson Tide football team. This team in real life went 10-1, outscoring their opponents 289 to 39 for a plus 250 point differential. Quarterback Joe Namath led the team, along with unanimous All-American linebacker Leroy Jordan, who would certainly cause trouble for the pitiful SCLSU offense. Alabama also had a running back in Cotton Clark, who would conceivably be splitting snaps with Forrest, but who in real life led the NCAA in touchdowns with 15. Alabama also features a loaded offensive line, as both tackles plus the center all ultimately became drafted to play professional football. Although none were ever stars, they were certainly exceptional college players, along with the majority of this Alabama roster. Flip over to SCLSU's side, and they have little other than Boucher. By Coach Klein's own words, quote, "There is nobody on this team that's any good, and the head coach should know best, right?" Coach Klein is completely correct, as SCLSU had lost 40 consecutive games before Boucher showed up. But the important thing to remember here is that Bobby makes the team as a whole much better all by himself. South Central Louisiana State University beats some legitimate real-life FBS teams in the film. Assuming that the film takes place in 1998, which was the movie's release date, the Mud Dogs were able to beat a 2-6 Iowa team, or more impressively, shut out a 7-5 Louisville team, 5-0. That 1998 Louisville squad scored almost 40 points a game, while they allowed 36.2 points per game. That 98 Louisville team played in some offensive shootouts, with high-scoring games throughout the year. The 5-0 win by the Mud Dogs truly highlights just how good they can be on defense on a national stage, as well as how poorly the offense can be when Boucher doesn't bring back any defensive touchdowns. The head coach matchup is a very one-sided affair. Alabama's Bear Bryant is commonly attributed the title of greatest college football coach of all time. The award for College Football Coach of the Year is named after him, and rightfully so. He coached for 38 years, won well over 300 games, and did so with a winning percentage of 78%. At Alabama, he did even better. He led them to 24 consecutive bowl games with a winning percentage of 83.5%. Complete domination. There isn't much to say for Coach Klein, as he didn't have much to work with, but did nothing with it anyway. Certainly no matchup for Bryant, but supposedly Klein is a very clever coach when in the right mindset, and we can easily assume that Klein will be at his best come game day against Alabama. We're nearing a conclusion here, and it is not even looking close. Realistically, Alabama's offensive line would run over Boucher and give Forrest a running lane that you could drive a Mack truck through. Alabama dominating this game was my first thought while reading this question, and it was very near my last, until I read the image one last time, and it changed everything. The first thing that you read, and I had almost overlooked it. Tied game, 30 seconds left. Alabama has not only failed to dominate the Mud Dogs as expected, they have found themselves tied with them, with the game on the line. And the more that I think about this, the less impossible that it seems. Remember that I said Alabama was 10-1 that year. Well, that one loss came in upset fashion to Georgia Tech, 7-6, a low-scoring affair that Alabama was unable to pull off. Georgia Tech was a 7-win team that year, certainly respectable, but so were those 1998 Louisville Cardinals, who fell to the Mud Dogs. I know that we're crossing over decades here, where football changed a lot, but the fact is that a respectable 7-win football team beat the Alabama Crimson Tide, and a respectable 7-win football team lost to the Mud Dogs. The Mud Dogs are not worthless, nor are they helpless. This is when my vision of the hypothetical game began to form, and my opinion of the outcome began to shift. Alabama was a power-running school in 1962, fitting that they have an all-star duo in Cotton Clark and Forrest Gump in the backfield. SCLSU's offense is atrocious, while Alabama's offense put up over 26 points per game. This means that the only possible way it could be a tie game with 10 seconds to go is if Bobby Boucher had single-handedly been shutting down the Alabama offense all game long. And the only way that SCLSU could ever score on Alabama is defensively. The game is likely tied 7-7 or 6-6, assuming that PATs would be hard to come by. The score could easily be tied 0-0. With all of this in mind, the answer to our little question becomes simple. Watching his prolific offense get hammered and frustrated as what to do, legendary coach Bear Bryant decides that he has no good options left. He calls a timeout and draws up the final play of the game. It's a unique variation on a dive play, as he knows that Forrest can't run east to west. The play is as simple as it gets. The center and the two guards and the fullback quadruple team Boucher, while the tackles form a funnel for Forrest to run through. The two teams come out for the last play of regulation, and Coach Klein has got Boucher foaming at the mouth for this last play. He rambles incoherently, and everyone but Forrest is scared. The ball is snapped. Namath hands the ball off to Gump and tells him, "Run." He takes the ball and heads straight up the chute, but Boucher is erratic and takes on the quadruple team head on like he has been all game. The players fall in a mess of bodies and pads as Forrest tries to run through. There may have been a chance for Forrest to bounce it to the outside, but he has neither good ball carrier vision nor overall football IQ. He runs into the wall of his own players, being driven backwards by Boucher. In a barbaric rage, he yells and Gump is knocked backwards. The scoreboard sounds as the game clock runs out. Tie game. What happens after that depends on what set of rules we're going by. If it's 1962, it would end in a tie. If the game took place in a more modern era, it would start an endless set of overtime periods. A defensive battle as robust as this one would be hard to call, but you guys can be the judge of that. By my best judgment, against my original judgment, after much consideration, I must say that Boucher stops Gump in this scenario. Please, let me know what you guys think about this question in the comments, as well as what you'd like to see a video on next.